Okay, this is the second iteration of the Chinese political institutions and culture uh, PowerPoints, and this is Mr. Clark, and we are ready to go with the introduction to the CCP, or the Chinese Communist Party. When we're studying China, it's important to note that democratic centralism and guardianship remain the ruling concepts in China. The Chinese Communist Party is organized hierarchically by levels. And the way that those levels work, at the lowest level, you have your village and townships. Above that, your counties. Above that, your provinces. And then finally, that of the nation. And the CCP exists as a managing force throughout that. And obviously, the hierarchy of the CCP in terms of prestige exists, where you would rise up the ranks if you were one of the people selected to do so, from the village to the county to the province to the national. Despite the CCP being the only political party in China, still only about 5% of the population holds CCP membership. When we're talking about the national iteration of the CCP, you have the National Party Congress. It has more than 2,000 delegates, but it only meets every 5 years. And its basic function isn't to democratically vote for and against policies. What it's made to do is it rubber stamps decisions, and more importantly, it conveys them downward. It's one way that the mass line could be seen as working, because it's the announcement of policies that the top of the CCP has made. It's also has a major role in electing the Central Committee. And even though it doesn't have any real formal authority, things like announcing the president is one of the primary functions that it has as an organizing force. Above the National Party Congress, you have the Central Committee. It has around 340 members, and it meets annually for a week. What it is, it's a gathering of elites, and their primary function is to elect the Politburo and the Standing Committee. So above the Central Committee, you have then the Politburo and the Standing Committee. The Politburo has 24 members. The Standing Committee has 7. These groups meet in secret, and the membership reflects the balance of power among factions. And that has been more true, and we'll discuss this in a slide here in a moment. That has been more true in the past, where differing factions had divided the Politburo and Standing Committee to a greater degree between kind of the communist holdovers, the conservatives, and the liberals. But now you're talking about different versions of the where agreement over political ideology is less of an issue in those areas, as Xi Jinping has been able to kind of finally weed out, through both age and centralization of power, those factions. Something to note is that 8 carefully controlled democratic parties are allowed, and they're representing interest groups such as intellectuals and businessmen. And they do have an advisory role, but they can't be anti or challenge the government. They have to be parallel institutions. And the CCP, stays in control. And so some limited party-sponsored dissent is the only kind allowed. When we talk about the inner workings of the CCP, the thing that comes most to mind is Guanxi, and that is something similar to the nomenclatura system that we discussed under Russia. Guanxi are more specifically, it's not like the pointing systems, but it's more personal connections. And Mao, for example, relied on those who had shared the trauma of the Long March. And those personal connections are the people that he trusted to be around him at the top of the party. And to this day, even though we have a form of government that is very different from that that Mao presented, Guanxi is still the glue of the Chinese political culture, and it very much resembles some of the patron clientelism that we talked about, for instance, when we discussed Mexico. Speaking of nomenclatura, cadres are chosen from lower levels. There's as many as you read in your Wood reading this week, 30,000 cadres that represent various localities. And these cadres are chosen from those lower levels of the party hierarchy for advancement based on loyalty, contributions, and effectiveness. Including kind of what kind of popularity you have in your locale, and all of those things kind of make up what Guanxi stands for. Also, there's heavy factionalism that has existed in the past in the CCP. And as I mentioned in the prior slide, Xi Jinping has been able to squash it a little bit. But the factions that have been represented in the past come from conservatives who are worried about democracy and the spread of market reforms, who believed in something closer to what Mao ascribed to. You had the reformers. These are the people who support capitalist changes, World Trade Organization memberships, the creation of the new Chinese bank, the pragmatic and not especially supportive of democracy, and like Hu Jintao, the president prior to Xi Jinping, would have definitely met within the reformers, and I think that would probably be where Xi Jinping is as well. The liberals have been out of power since the 1989 Tiananmen Square uprising. They support political as well as economic reforms. But like I said, these were divisions that were more important in the prior to Xi Jinping kind of ousting holdovers that didn't represent exactly what he thought. Now, I want to talk about a short kind of timeline of the way that Xi Jinping was able to do this. So Xi Jinping came into the presidency March 4th, 2013. That's when the National People's Congress elected him. And while the presidency is the kind of the least powerful of Xi's key roles, it's still symbolically critical and provides Xi a platform in which he can promote Chinese interests on the global scale. Then in October 24th, 2017 is when he was enshrined. The 19th Party Congress gave Xi's political thinking the AOK, which is called enshrining, and put his thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era into the party's constitution. And because Xi is still serving in the office, this move is widely interpreted as placing him in the same company as the founder of modern China, Mao, and cementing his authority. Xi's signature One Belt, One Road initiative is to invest trillions of yuan in trade links with Central Asia and Europe, was also included in the party's constitution, lending it weight and giving it more credibility for trying to happen. Then in October 25th, 2017, he became the party chief again. Xi was handed his second term as general secretary of the party during the 19th Party Congress. In March 11th, in 2018, we found a change in the Constitution to end term limits. This was a big deal because every presidents before this, like Hu Jintao, had stepped down after 2 terms. But this time, the National People's Congress voted nearly unanimously, and again, the National People's Congress didn't have any authority behind this. They were just rubber stamping the decisions that had been made, but it was a clear sign that Xi Jinping had been able to get rid of the factions that would have challenged his usurping indefinite authority. So the National People's Congress voted nearly unanimously to abolish the term limits for the presidency. There were 2 votes against them and 3 abstentions, but that might have been for show as well. The elimination of those limits caught many by surprise, but the official media of the party said it would reflect the will of the people, though obviously there are probably many people who had concerns, especially those who are dissenters of Xi Jinping. And then on March 17, 2018, he became a second-term president. The National People's Congress elected Xi again for a second 5-year term, and it seems up until now in 2020 that it's very likely that he will not step down after his second term in 2023 ends. At the October Party Congress in 2018, the party broke with tradition and installed no obvious successor to Xi in the Politburo Standing Committee. And this kind of elimination of term limits throws into question whether he's going to step down or not. So in terms of the way that the CCP works and its dual form of government, the way that it works through the government proper, is highlighted in these two slides. In the next slide, we'll discuss the mass line and then kind of more of the functions of the parallel government as well as Feng Shou. Thank you for listening.